One day, Vimalakirti respectfully approached the Buddha and asked in a gentle, earnest tone, "Honored one, how far apart are life and death?" At first, this sounded like a simple inquiry, but it reached into the deepest truths of existence. The Buddha did not answer right away. Instead, he picked up a leaf that had just floated down from the tree above them. Cradling it in his hand, he paused for a moment, then asked, "Vimalakirti, where did this leaf come from?" Vimalakirti examined the leaf and replied calmly, "Honored one, this leaf fell from the branches of the tree above. It once absorbed sunlight, drank in water, and drew nourishment from the earth so it could grow strong." He had barely finished speaking before the Buddha nodded thoughtfully and asked a second question. "So, is this leaf now dead?" Caught off guard, Vimalakirti paused. He took a closer look at the fallen leaf and realized it was not brown or shriveled. Instead, it seemed to hold a subtle, lingering vitality. He drew a slow breath and answered, "Although it's no longer attached to the branch and can't take in sunlight like it did before, it will return to the soil and become nourishment for the earth. It might appear to be gone, yet it also seems it hasn't completely vanished. It left the tree, but it hasn't lost its meaning. It still exists in another form." The Buddha smiled, looking pleased with Vimalakirti's words. After a brief silence, the Buddha spoke again. "What you've described is the heart of life and death. These two appear to be opposites, but they're really just different points in the flow of causes and conditions. A leaf that falls is also a leaf beginning anew. Its disappearance feeds the earth and nurtures other living things. Death isn't an absolute ending. It's the transformation and continuation of life's power in another form." His voice echoed, full of compassion and insight, guiding Vimalakirti into a whole new understanding. The distance between life and death, the Buddha hinted, might not be as vast as we imagine. Then the Buddha gazed warmly at Vimalakirti and spoke again. "You said the leaf's falling seems like it died on the surface. Yet in truth, it's only beginning another phase of life. If death is just one step in an ongoing cycle, why do people experience such fear when facing it? Why do they feel such a deep sense of clinging and pain?" Vimalakirti fell into thoughtful silence. He recalled countless partings, family, friends, all the people around him. Life and death have always seemed like an unbridgeable gap, stirring dread in every heart. This fear doesn't just spring from death's mystery, it also comes from our attachment to the idea of me. Softly, Vimalakirti asked, "Honored one, why are beings so fixated on the self? We know life is ever-changing, yet we still can't let go." The Buddha regarded him with a calm, penetrating gaze. "Because of ignorance, living beings fail to see life for what it truly is. All suffering, fear, and confusion arise from holding tightly to the self. Life and death look like opposites, but in reality, there is no definitive boundary between them. If you treat birth as a beginning and death as an end, you'll trap yourself in suffering. Once you realize everything is woven from interdependent causes, you see that life and death are part of an endless cycle." His voice felt like a clear stream flowing straight into Vimalakirti's heart. "The fear people feel in the face of death comes from misunderstanding the self. They believe they exist as a separate, permanent entity, an I that will be destroyed at life's end. That's why they refuse to let go and remain caught between living and dying. But in truth, what you call I isn't independent. It's a product of many factors coming together. Birth and death are simply the outward signs of those factors changing." Vimalakirti remained silent for a while. Each of the Buddha's words seemed to strike a chord deep inside him. Was it true that the pain of life and death arises only because people fail to grasp how everything is in flux and woven by countless conditions? If life and death aren't so far apart, then what does death really mean? Is it an ending, or is it some kind of beginning? He thought of the leaf again. Though it had fallen from the branch, it hadn't lost its deeper purpose. It provided nourishment for the soil so new life could grow. Perhaps the essence of birth and death is exactly what the Buddha had explained. Only by seeing beyond our stubborn sense of self can we grasp that life and death are simply different states in a shifting web of causes and effects. The Buddha's eyes grew more profound as he once again glanced at the leaf, as though seeking deeper wisdom in its delicate veins. After a moment, he asked quietly, Vimalakirti, you mentioned that life and death don't seem to be truly separate. If birth and death are just transitions in a flow of causes and conditions, what force drives that flow? Vimalakirti took a steady breath, hoping for more guidance. She thought about all the ups and downs of the world, the sudden twists of fate. What pushes living beings to drift through the circle of life and death? The Buddha pointed toward leaves floating along a gentle stream and said, "Look at that leaf carried by the current. Why does it move in that direction?" Watching the leaf on the water, Vimalakirti answered softly, "Because the water carries it. The flow determines where it goes." The Buddha nodded. Exactly. Beings are much like that leaf, carried along by the powerful current of what we call karma. You may think you control your own destiny, but in truth, the causes and conditions you've set in motion are guiding you. Karma comes from your actions, words, and thoughts. Whether good or bad, it will come back to you when the time is right. Vimalakirti closed her eyes and absorbed the Buddha's teaching. She realized that every joy or hardship in life has its roots in past deeds. Birth, death, pain, and even everyday encounters are all part of an intricate web of causes and results. Sensing her reflection, the Buddha spoke kindly. So many assume they can control fate, yet it's often their own cravings, anger, and ignorance that truly steer the course of their lives. Because people cling to the idea of self, these forces silently take hold, generating an endless chain of actions that yield corresponding results. Karma isn't something outside of you. It's born from your own attachments. Vimalakirti felt a sudden clarity, seeing how these chains of thought and emotion lock beings into one cycle after another. Greed, hostility, and blindness to the truth keep fueling the wheel of life and death. The Buddha continued, "If you wish to break these chains, you must uproot those attachments by recognizing the self is not what it seems." She listened quietly, a new depth of understanding about life and death unfolding within her. Finally, she asked, "Honored one, if karma is so powerful and the cycle of life and death is so deep, what can one do to truly break free?" A soft smile formed on the Buddha's lips. "Karma is strong, but not unchangeable. Just as you can redirect a flowing stream, you can also shift the direction of karma. If you cultivate your mind and transform your habits, you can gradually reshape the causes you create and begin to step out of the cycle." Though she felt hope, Vimalakirti still wondered, but how do I begin to practice? If these attachments and karmic forces are so ingrained, where do I find the path to freedom? The Buddha paused a moment, then explained, "It all rests on mindfulness and insight. Mindfulness means staying aware of the present moment, paying attention to every thought, every emotion, without letting craving, anger, or ignorance take over. Insight arises through that mindful exploration, helping you see the fleeting nature of every experience and the true nature of life." He continued, "Once you become mindful of your mental activity, you realize that all suffering and turmoil come from clinging to illusions. With steady awareness, you reduce your inner conflicts and free yourself from the weight of karma. Through insight, you see clearly that what you call the self is made of ever-shifting elements. That awareness naturally softens your attachment, and your suffering in the cycle of birth and death diminishes." Vimalakirti felt a spark of realization. Liberation isn't achieved in a single leap. It's an inner revolution that unfolds over time. Through mindfulness and insight, one gradually sees the fragile nature of the self and moves beyond the grip of life and death. The Buddha went on, "Remember, liberation isn't about running away from life or death. It's about recognizing their true nature and rising above fixation. Once you remove your attachment to a separate self, you discover genuine freedom." In quiet reverence, Vimalakirti sensed a profound clarity, as if a fresh breeze had swept away all the fog in her mind. She realized this journey wasn't only about her own liberation, but about others as well. Picking up on her thoughts, the Buddha spoke, "Although personal practice can free you from the cycle, the suffering and confusion that bind all beings are not just personal matters. True freedom means helping others awaken too. If everyone grasps the reality of life and death, there will be less suffering and more understanding in the world." Moved by these words, Vimalakirti asked, "Honored one, How can we help others awaken? How do we guide them to see past the illusions of life and death and discover the path to genuine freedom? The Buddha gently held the leaf in his hand. Helping others awaken begins at the root. Look at this leaf. Though it appears separate, it depends on the tree, the sun, the rain, and the earth. People likewise aren't isolated. We're all connected in a vast web. Suffering doesn't come from outside, but from the attachments that grow in our hearts. Show people that their pain arises when they cling to a separate self. Once they realize they're woven into the entire fabric of existence, fear and obsession with the self can loosen. His voice was kind but resolute. Through your own practice, you cultivate compassion and wisdom to help others see their inherent potential. Everyone holds the seed of awakening, though it may be buried under ignorance and clinging. By practicing kindness, by teaching with patience, you water that seed in their hearts so it can sprout and flourish. Vimalakirti listened, filled with a sense of respect and responsibility. She understood that helping others recognize the truth of life and death required both sharing wisdom and exemplifying it. The Buddha added, guiding others isn't always straightforward. Their minds may still be clouded. But if we keep planting seeds of goodness, those seeds will mature when conditions are right. Just as the warm breeze of spring eventually coaxes all things to bloom, so can genuine care and understanding bring about awakening in due time. After a period of silent reflection, Vimalakirti felt the weight of the Buddha's teaching. Personal insight must extend to all beings, offering them a way to break free from the cycles of existence. The Buddha gazed into the distance, as if looking beyond the boundaries of time, and addressed Vimalakirti again. You've inquired about the essence of life and death, and how to go beyond the cycle. Now let me tell you a deeper truth, nirvana. Although Vimalakirti had heard of nirvana before, it seemed abstract, like a distant cloud. The Buddha went on, nirvana is not a place you escape to, nor is it mere avoidance of birth and death. It's the direct realization that life and death are illusions. Consider this leaf in my hand. It falls to the earth and returns to the soil, yet it never truly leaves the cycle of nature. He continued, nirvana is seeing beyond the polarities of living and dying, understanding they are just different expressions of ever-shifting conditions. In that awareness, you're no longer afraid. You become free, at peace, unbound by the idea of a separate self. Vimalakirti felt a flash of understanding, and yet some lingering wonder. If nirvana isn't an escape from existence, then why do we cherish it so deeply? The Buddha's gaze was both tender and strong. Nirvana is a realization, not a retreat. It's a freedom gained by seeing how everything is woven together. People remain caught in fear of death because they cling to the self. When you recognize that the self is a mirage, constantly forming and dissolving, you discover that life and death aren't fixed. Nirvana is the absence of fear and fixation, the experience of true serenity and courage. At last, Vimalakirti began to see what nirvana really is. Not an ending, but a clarity that cuts through all illusions. The Buddha's voice softened. Nirvana doesn't mark the final stop. It's a renewal. A leaf may return to the soil, but that's not the end of its journey. True realization allows you to see beyond the changeable nature of existence, to rest in a boundless understanding. Vimalakirti sat quietly, feeling an unprecedented stillness. Nirvana, he realized, is not the negation of life. It's stepping back from attachments so you can witness the unfolding of existence without fear. Life and death become a single stream, and nirvana is the deep insight that neither confines nor clings. With compassionate eyes, the Buddha looked at Vimalakirti and asked, do you now see how far apart life and death really are? Vimalakirti bowed his head in reflection, sensing everything had come into focus. Honored one, he replied, life and death are not as separate as we usually think. They're two faces of the same reality, arising and dissolving through interconnected causes. The self is what traps us, and by seeing through this illusion, we realize that life and death are not divided by any real distance, only by our perception of coming together or falling apart. The Buddha gently nodded, his gaze radiating kindness. Indeed, we get entangled in suffering only when we cling to the self. If you rise above that attachment, you'll see life and death for what they are. fleeting events in a stream of causes. Genuine liberation means perceiving all this clearly and living without fear, at peace, and at ease. His words settled into the silence, filled with profound compassion. In that stillness, Vimalakirti felt an unwavering serenity. He understood that life and death, once seen as opposing forces, are both contained in a vast, ever-shifting reality. The true distance between them had never been more than a breath of misunderstanding. Once the veil of illusion lifts, nothing remains but a calm acceptance and an open heart.